Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's panel discussion on the transition to a low-carbon economy and its implications for the steel sector in developing countries. Governments, businesses, and civil society across the globe prioritize sustainability and green initiatives. So, evaluating the opportunities and challenges associated with this transition is not just essential, but it's also imperative. Today we will evaluate the green transition, focusing on an energy-intensive industry, which is steel. Before introducing our respectful panelists, allow me to introduce myself briefly and our association and tell you why we have organized this session. I'm Arman Vurdu. Since 1996, I undertook various roles at the Ministry of Foreign Trade and the Ministry of Economy. I've served as Commercial Counsel at the London Embassy of Turkey, and I served as Deputy Director General of the European Union, Director General for Economic Research and Assessment, and Director General of Turkish Free Zones. And for the last 9 years, I'm serving as the General Secretary of Istanbul Minerals and Metals Exporters Association, abbreviated as IMEP. IMEP is a non-profit organization. Our primary mission is to promote exports of our member companies. We have almost 73,000 members from 6 different sectors, which are steel, ferrous and non-ferrous metals, minerals and mining, chemicals and chemical products, electrical and electronics, and jewelry. With these sectors, we represent approximately 40% of Turkey's total exports. And to increase our exports, we organize B2B meetings, buying missions, trade delegations, we participate in international trade shows, and we provide training to enhance capacity of our members. We conduct market research, inform the exporting firms about Ministry of Trade's foreign trade strategies. We also encourage the development of high-value added exports by organizing competitions to bring together industry and researchers, universities, entrepreneurs, and designers. Sustainability is also very high on our agenda for our exporters. We follow EU's CBAM mechanism and developments on climate change. Rules-based international trade is key to our exporters, so we need a predictable system and peace to increase our exports. That's why we value the WTO, which aims to increase world trade volume and accelerate the trade liberalization of the world. Turkey is the 7th biggest steel producer globally, and according to 2023 figures, Turkey's crude steel production is approximately 34 million tons, and our steel export amounted to $15 billion. Let me introduce our esteemed panelists representing both producers and exporters in the steel sector. Their expertise will enrich our discussion and provide valuable insight with all of your questions and comments. Mr. Uğur Dalbeler is an experienced steel market expert, and he has been involved in several key roles in Turkish steel industry. Mr. Dalbeler is the Deputy Chairman in Turkish Steel Exporters Association. He is a member of the Executive Committee at World Steel Association. He has served as Chairman of IRPA's International Rebar Producers and Exporters Association for 10 years. And currently he is the Chief Executive Officer of a prominent steel company in Turkey, Çolakoğlu Group. Dr. Veysel Yayan started his career in Ministry of Trade, and he served in various positions in the State Planning Organization and the Undersecretariat of Defense Industries. He was acting Undersecretary there, and he was also Undersecretary to Ministry of Science, Industry and Technology. He has been serving the presidency of the Ferrous and Non-Ferrous Metals Assembly at the Union of Chambers and Commodity Exchange of Turkey. Uh, he has various publications on iron and steel incentive systems, defense industry, working life, and for the time being, he is serving as the General Secretary of Turkish Steel Producers Association. Today, our panelists will be discussing best practices in achieving the decarbonization to exploring challenges in financing the transition, from strategies to increase circularity in the industry to examining the concept of common but differentiated responsibilities of developing countries. We will also delve into the risks and opportunities presented by initiatives such as the EU CBAM and other carbon pricing tools. And additionally, our conversation will touch upon crucial aspects such as technology transfer, transformation, carbon intensity, and subsidies, increasing protectionism. Together we can harness the potential of the green transition to drive positive change and create a more sustainable, inclusive, further future for generations to come. Now, if you allow me, let's commence our dialogue, our panel. I would like to start with Mr. Uğur Dalbaler. Welcome, first of all, Mr. Dalbaler.
Thank you.
The question for you is, how was the world steel production, demand, and market dynamics worldwide, and what factors do experts anticipate will have the most significant impact on the global steel industry's outlook?
Before starting, I just wonder if there's anybody around the table who's directly involved in steel business. So this is how I start. So it seems there is nobody. Anyway, steel, as you might know, the most common material in our lives. So everywhere we touch steel, in fact. And today, steel has approximately 1.9 billion ton of global capacity, out of which 55% being performed in China. And Chinese have came to this level only within 20 years, which is more than what, in fact, the world generated within 150 years during the Industrial Revolution. So that's changed our lives in a quite, challenging atmosphere. I've been involved in the steel business for the last 40 years, ever since I graduated from school. I'm in the steel business. So the last year, compared to the year before, the world has produced more or less the same amount of steel. China was still number one with slightly over 1 billion tons. The second biggest producer is India with 140, which in fact is only what the largest steel company in China performs on an annual basis. So I just wanted to give you this example to, make sort of an imagination in your minds how China is important in our industry. But last year, only positive performance was shown in India with almost 14% of increase. Although India has more or less the same population as China, but India is far beyond Chinese. The 2/3 of the steel industry is in fact located in the Southeast Asia and Far East. So China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Taiwan, and so forth, they do consume and produce 2/3 of the global steel production. Europe does about 150 million tons, in the US approximately 80 million tons of production, more or less 100 million tons of consumption. So Turkey, among these producers, as Mr. Vurdev just mentioned, occupies 8th to 7th, depending on the performance on an annual basis. So exchanging positions with Germany, who is today the largest steel manufacturer in Europe. The last year, especially after conflict in Ukraine, the world has, or the steel industry, been affected by the high in energy cost, which is the most import input in our industry. And for this year, our expectation, the steel industry is going to perform more or less the same level as 23 have shown us. The main reason, especially after the COVID pandemic, world has gone into a higher inflationary environment that brought this money, tightening monetary policies that had impacted demand. But there was also one major change which will go deeply, I believe, in coming moments. David, over the last 5 years, the world has seen quite a protectionist policies. So from globalization, the world now start moving towards regionalization. And this is mainly was observed in developed countries such as US and EU. They have almost, Tatiana should know, used all kinds of trade measures. But at the end of the day, they realized which wasn't really effective, so they came up with some other solutions. The Trump administration brought this national security issue and then imposed 25% of import duty on steel and aluminum from all over the world. But over the last 5 years, they have given some exemptions to certain countries, such as NAFTA members, Mexico and Canada, and then later on to Japanese, Brazil, and finally EU. So Anna would respond to this issue, but as far as I know, from my experience, World Trade Organization bans strictly voluntary quantitative restrictions, but today does in fact exist. And then EU also came with some measures and imposed safeguards since 2018. And they've been expanding or extending these measures for year by year. And I believe in June there will be another investigation whether it is going to be extended. To my guess, it will, because of the agreement it's already been concluded between EU and US. So we see the world is now dividing into two, developed nations forming their own playground and trading happily within themselves, but leaving developing nations or undeveloped nations out of this game. So I believe this will have a big impact in coming years, as far as specifically for the steel industry. Let me stop this at this point, and then we'll carry on after.
Yeah. Now, I would like to send a similar question to Mr. Yayan. Mr. Yayan, what is the steel manufacturing capacity in Turkey, and are there steel companies striving to achieve net zero emissions? You can, compare the capacity with the world, and you can maybe give examples of best practices from Turkey.
Yes. Turkish steel production capacity is around 60 million ton, approach to 60 million ton. And Turkish steel sector is one of the fastest growing sector in the world after China and South Korea. During the last 50 years period, we started as an 31st steel producer, then step by step we developed our position. In the year 2021, we have been seventh biggest producer position. Then consecutive 2 years, we lost our position as an eighth steel producer because of economical conditions. Then this year, in January, we started as an seventh again, with 24% increase in production. Basic dynamics in this growth is the domestic demand. Turkish domestic demand is increasing very sharply because Turkey is one of the fastest developing country in the OECD countries, between OECD countries. Export also is one of the big instrument in this respect. Export-import ratio 10 years ago was around 150% level for the benefit of export. This year it has been 54% only. There is effect of protectionist measures that Mr. Dalbeler mentioned. Safeguard measures started to be implemented in 2018 by United States, then in 6 months by the European Union, and at that time it was 8.5 million ton our export to European Union. Mr. Wood mentioned during his statement that Turkey is exporting around 45% of its export to European Union countries. Our steel sector's position was even better. We were exporting 50% to European Union, but it has been decreased very sharply. It came to the only 2.7 million ton, from 8.5 million ton, 2.7 million ton level. And this represents only 26% of Turkish steel exports. So, weight of European Union decreased very sharply because of protectionist measures. During the meeting, I asked questions, relation between protectionism and the carbon border adjustment mechanism. If you don't allow to objectively working mechanism, if you protect too much, then you will lose the opportunity to use the carbon border adjustment mechanism. For example, in Turkish case, with 26%, your power will be very limited. At that time, Turkey was the biggest steel exporter to European Union. Then Eurofer 2 weeks ago declared that the first 5 exporters are China, India, Taiwan, Japan, and Vietnam. So after Indonesia, Turkey is coming to the 6th position. And I would like to remind you that Russian Federation is outside of the picture because of the Ukraine sanctions, because of the Ukraine war. For that reason, Turkey's position has been softened too much. And it's not giving opportunity to European Union to have big control, to motivate Turkish economy in direction of CBAM. One of the problems, as a few minutes ago Mr. Dalbeler mentioned, there is good relations between the United States and the European Union, and they establish quota system between them. And if a few years, UK is also trying to establish similar mechanism. If the United States and UK also declare similar mechanism, then the state aids to reach the Green Deal targets in European Union, billions of dollars to the European companies, billions of grant aid or soft loan is supporting to establish their conditions in accordance with the Green Deal conditions, and this will give them opportunity to export more easily than the other countries, to United States, to UK, and other similar countries. So this is direct aid, and in accordance with our free trade agreements, it is totally forbidden. But now in Turkey, government still strictly following this, even the Green Deal related investments not being supported. But as an lawmaker, European Union independently is giving this kind of aid, a very generous manner. So this also negatively affects, because we are not in a position to increase our capacity. Our export limited. It came from export-import ratio came from 150% to 54%. On the other hand, the forest countries are giving big state aids, and the import of the steel products came to the 17 million ton level. So it's creating pressure on our production capacity, physical production, and our production decreased last 2 years, 13% and 4%. Starting from this year, we hope that the new conditions will be established. Some measures might be taken, and our production will increase. And we hope that we believe that this production capacities, the new ones and existing ones, will consider to be relying in comparison to the Green Deal conditions. So we are expecting that till the year 2053, our production will reach to 70 million ton level. And this basically will be dependent upon the domestic demand. That's the situation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Raber, we are talking so much about the transition to a low carbon economy. And Turkey is a developing country. And from a developing country's perspectives, what are the obstacles and challenges for them to, surmount those challenges to get the transition to a low carbon economy?
The life of developing countries are going to be very difficult in the coming years, that's for sure, because they're the most vulnerable ones with this current transition period. I mean, if you take into account that 70% of the population is in fact living in those countries, but they only emit 1% of the emission. But today, so far, in the carbon stock, half of the amount being generated, in fact, it's generated by the EU and US. Although today China is the biggest emitter, but at the same time, they spend more money than the rest of the world. I mean, 2021, as per the reports, China invested on the renewable energy more than US, EU, and all other countries together. And with today's environment, where lots of trade restrictions are being in place, where the developed nations now isolating developing countries, I think it's going to create it's going to be a very challenging period for those countries to fulfill these obligations. The finance is going to be the biggest issue. But if you don't allow these developing countries to build new industries, cleaner, and being able to export, so they won't find that chance to take these steps. That's where my main concern lies. According to the studies, it needs almost close to $2 trillion per year to have this transition within the developed countries. But if you look at the real numbers, some of the estimates is they only spend maybe $80 billion, and some even says 1/3 was actually realized. So under these circumstances, I believe the gap between developed countries and developing countries are going to get bigger and greater, and that in fact might cause some other issues. But before going into this, I believe we also have to talk about political stability all around the world, especially in the part of the world that we are living in. With all these conflicts, I believe that needs to be settled in the first place so that we can go into the other subjects to discuss. And creating an environment where the rich gets richer and poor gets poorer, how are we going to achieve sort of this tranquility? I mean, we're talking about green future, but we need to get the peace in the first place, what I really truly believe.
Thank you. Mr. Yan, can you give us maybe a snapshot of production process in Turkish steel manufacturing industry and uh, what is the carbon intensity of steel manufacturing in Turkey when you compare the production process with the other countries that Turkey is competing?
Turkish steel sector is very much business-minded sector. We established our facilities on the basis of electrical arc furnaces. And we have been criticized very extremely during the last 10, 15 years. They told us that this is not cost effective. Integrated facilities gaining more profit. You are doing big mistake. Why you are doing this? At that time, the production process was very practical, and also the cost of investment in comparison to integrated facilities are more competitive, lower, one-third, even lower than one-third. Our sector insists to continue to utilize the electrical arc furnaces. Then this Green Deal matters came to agenda. That the table changed, and all countries started to direct themselves to electrical arc furnaces. We are with 72% production in electrical arc furnaces after the United States in a best position, producing steel at lowest rate of the emission. Mm-hmm. This is our comparative advantage at this stage, and we are continuing to grow in this direction. And we have done a study with the support of the EBRD, and this showed to us that our production will approach 70 million tons till the year 2050, and our capacity will reach around 98 million ton level in the year 2050. And in this process, in this time period, our integrated steel capacity will not increase. It will stay at the same level. They will try to change their process, and they will invest in the electrical arc furnaces. So after this time, there is no probability to invest for the new basic oxygen furnaces. In this respect, considering the existing structure, it's around 600 kilogram carbon emission per steel production for the electrical arc furnaces, and 2,200 kilogram for integrated facilities. It might be around 2,000 in Turkish facilities. And if you take the average, it is 1,000 ton average emission production during the steel production process. And this is the lowest level in the world after the United States. And we will try to develop this with the new technologies, keeping basic oxygen furnaces at the same level and increasing electrical arc furnaces. That is the position of Turkish steel sectors for today.
So, Dagmar, we know that Turkey is a part of European Coal and Steel Community, maybe since its establishment, and also Turkey has customs union with the European Union. What are the industry's relations with the European Union in terms of the industry and trade?
I mean, we consider ourselves at least being part of the European community, historically, geographically, trade-wise, and so forth. And as you've just mentioned in the previous session, in 1995, we became part of the customs union. That means we became part of the common the market. In 1997, we've signed the ECAC treaty, which in fact is the first the agreement that established EU today. So we thought again, we are part of that community, the European steel and coal community. Means, we can trade freely, fairly. And the first 20 years, we thought everything was in order because when you look at the data, the EU was always had a surplus on a trade relation. But when we've gained the first surplus back in 2017, the things have started changing a bit. And then today we ended up losing market share because of the safeguard measures in place against Turkey. And then the trade measures already being in place. So when we look at the total imports, which still remains more or less the same, we lose our ground. So that to me does not comply with the basic, philosophy of this agreement. At another point, EU now is being granting state aid under term of decarbonization to its industry. I think today have reached almost 9 billion euros in total, and it will continue. This is going to basically for replacing their old blast furnaces with new electric arc furnace technologies, where the emission is about 1/5. But in Turkey, 75% of the industry is already within that route. So I thought it would make sense if this agreement works properly so that we can reduce the total emission of the whole steel production within that geography. But what's happening, bloc in Turkey, just pushing ourselves to utilize only 50-55% of what the existing capacity is, while building new capacities. Overall, we don't really reduce the total carbon emission. We just, do it something else. But there's another example with US. The US imposed this 232 based on the national security reason. Seems we, as being this NATO member for the last 70 years, seems only threat to the national security in US, while Japan being excluded, Europe, Brazil. So 85% of the imports of steel into the US being exempted from this duties, while this, poor NATO member is still being considered as a threat. So, if we keep going on like this, I think the countries like Turkey or India, the developing countries, will have tough time to achieve, on this sustainability issue to the goals that they have in front of them. So trade to me is the most important element to strengthen or the relations between countries to establish, as I mentioned, the peace around us. So if we keep, get the countries moving away from each other, it's going to be tough for all of us. So instead of having more and more trade relations or establishing more agreements serving for free and fair trade, it seems that we're going in totally an opposite direction.
So yeah, I also want to convey the same question to you because I know that you have thoughts about this protectionist measures. Mr. Davaler has mentioned European Union and US. What are your opinions about these protectionist measures and how will they affect the trade and decarbonization process in your perspective?
Yeah. First, protectionist measures totally against the World Trade Organization regulations. When I was attending to OECD meetings on behalf of Turkish steel sector, at the time they were insistently and systematically referring to the free and fair trade. After some years, I have seen that there is no such a kind of reference. they are not referring to free trade, fair trade. They are insistently requesting some limitations. And I mentioned very many times to that. But this is not happening. And new trade areas trying to be established between US, European Union, some other countries. In any case, we don't want to be outside of this system, but to make investment, you need to have some trade relations. You need to have more production, gain some money, and to invest the new technologies. So if you cannot have this opportunity, similar to European Union, they are allocating billions of dollars to their companies for establishing new system to reach the Green Deal matters. For example, in Turkey, to steel sector, there is no single penny support. But in European Union, some facilities, if they are establishing the electrical arc furnace, they are having full support from the government. New capacity should be forbidden with government aid, but if you put as an Green Deal target, green transition, you can support them actively. So this is affecting negatively the reliability of the carbon border adjustment mechanism. The developing countries think that this is unjust practice. To give opportunity to developing countries, I think we should give them opportunity to have the export, the trade relations, and the fruit of this trade developments will give them opportunity to invest in direction of Green Deal expectations. This stage is not suitable to these expectations at this stage. I hope that after they finish their investments, they will be more comfortable, and at that time start that soften the regulations, give them opportunity also to adapt themselves in accordance with our regulations.
Well, we don't say that we're against subsidies, okay? The ECSC clearly defines the areas where state aid can be granted.
Yeah.
If it's an R&D, if it's environmentally, after of course comply with the standards, or if you close capacities, so forth. But changing the terminology and treating differently, of course, that creates the the unfairness. U.S. over the last 5 years have transferred almost $150 billion to its steel industry by, protecting them with this 25% of duty. Mm-hmm. And now they renew all steel industry in U.S. Yes, very strong, up to date. But then the same steel industry being supported in such a way keep knocking the doors of DOC and complaining that Turkish steel the exports are being subsidized by their governments. The same happens in Europe as well. So that unfair approach is what's causing today the problem. I mean, I'm in the steel business, as I said, for 40 years. I've sold steel all over the world, competed with every producer all around the world, within the country as well. But over the last years, the way we go, it's really concerning us. I mean, whenever we faced a trade investigation in the past, we always thought that would be an opportunity to separate good or bad. And that was giving us the chance to eliminate our competition, because we always came out with a positive result. But today we cannot talk about it anymore. I mean, the way the investigations being conducted in various places is just to protect their own industry, regardless there is a rational or, let's say, real reason behind it.
Thank you. Mr. Yayan, I would also like to convey a question to you. We are mentioning about the transition of the industry to reduce carbon emissions. And what are the emerging technologies in the industry, and what's the role of scrap for getting to a zero target? And by thinking Turkey, what measures are being implemented to promote decarbonization, and what are on the agenda of Turkey, the Turkish steel industry in the future?
Yeah. At this stage, our problem is the climate change law has not been enacted yet. It's not in power. Also, emission trade system is not also in power. That is problem. But even under these conditions, Turkish steel sector is taking necessary steps to satisfy the Green Deal expectations. Integrated facilities, as I mentioned, there might be opportunity to establish new facility, theoretically, new facility with the hydrogen processes, but it is very new, and in the short time, there is no any opportunity in this respect. It will be very costly. At this stage, to change the processes to some extent, or to change with the new electrical arc furnaces to integrated facilities area, which is the alternative action. And our facilities, Erdemir Group, declared carbon zero target till the year 2050, and with their own budget, $3.2 billion. There is no state aid still on this issue in Turkey. And our electrical arc furnaces, on the one hand, they are trying to modernize their facilities to utilize the more energy efficient system, to establish more energy efficient systems, create renewable energy opportunities. More or less, all companies searching on this area. Already, some facilities are established rooftop solar energies, and some areas in different regions of the Turkey. The problem in this respect is the European Union's policy. They are telling that we can calculate on your account only if this renewable energy established in your industrial side. Our side of, for example, 300 kilometers away, one of the Turkish steel producer establishing solar energy infrastructure. At this stage, they are refusing this. I mean, this is not understandable. This is totally, commercial limitations. Your target is to develop renewable energy. If steel producer is investing on his behalf just to utilize in his facilities, why you are not calculating? This is not motivating the steel sector. Also, utilizing renewable energy produced with renewable energy, hydrogen, in DRI, HBI, for electrical arc furnaces, even for integrated facilities, seems one of the other alternatives. Some of the small examples are in production process. One induction furnaces started to invest on this area, the HBI production, DRI HBI production. They applied to Ministry of Industry for having the incentive, and it refused. While European Union allocating billions of dollars, our system is still mentioning the free trade agreement. Government support is unavailable. For that reason, we cannot support this. It will change. It will change, but it needs some understandings also change. Because first, the bureaucracy is willing to see that the climate change law will be in process, in power, and after that, all players should see the carbon trade system is working. under these conditions, it is negatively affecting our position to invest to this area. It's taking time. For that reason, we need to have some transition period, similar to the European steel producers. They started in the year 2004. The carbon-free allowances given to all facilities. For example, one of the company, there are some publications mentioning that this company utilized around 1.5 billion euros selling their free allowance to the market. There is no such a kind of practice in Turkey. So in 1.5 year period after this time, I don't think that it is easy to settle all this. We need some transition period, some motivation that we will do the same with the European producers. We are totally supporting the Green Deal matter, but without having such kind of flexibilities, it will not be easy for us. It will be very difficult with the condition of the safeguards. Can you imagine? Safeguard has put into effectivity in the year 2018. It was also Section 212 in the year 2001. It took around, you may remember, I don't know, it took around 9 months. European Union adopted immediately. Then United States stopped this safeguard measure, and it has been cancelled. But this time, after the United States, the European Union thought that there might be some traffic change. For that reason, they adopted similar things. And in 3 years, all conditions change. They told us that we will eliminate. Please believe us. Don't take us some counteraction. Then some minister told our ministers that we would adopt that, but the United States didn't allow us, because if we eliminate, if we exclude somebody's, then some export will come to European market, and European producers export to the United States, so it will negatively affect United States. For that reason, we couldn't change the conditions. Then we came to the 6th year. Now it should be finished. As I mentioned, it was 8.5 million tons. Now it is 2.7 million tons. Conditions totally changed. There is no reason to extend. But I have written our opinion, as association's opinion, to some places. I told that it should be stopped at this stage. In June, it should be stopped. But we don't expect that they can stop, because safeguard measures will be integrated with the carbon border adjustment mechanism, and after it put into effectivity in the year 2026, they will plan to eliminate. So if there is such a kind of clear connection between protectionist measures and carbon border adjustment mechanism, how you feel as a country planning to export to the European market? That is the case, and this is too much disturbing the producers in Turkey.
Last question for Mr. Daguer, and we are in the last 12 minutes, and I will spare the maybe 8 minutes to question and answers. What do you think about the potential economic implications of the EU CBAM, as Mr. Yayan mentioned, to Turkish industry?
What I believe in the short run, it'll be to our benefit. The reason being because at the end of the day, Europe imports more or less 30 million tons of steel all around the world. And although, as I mentioned at the beginning, that our portion is getting smaller and smaller, but if you look at the origins where the steel is coming from, their carbon emission is about 4 or 5 times higher than what we generate. So I believe by CBAM coming into the force effectively, that has going to give us quite a big advantage, depending on the carbon, of course, tax or the price of the carbon. But it will not last very long because of the aid or support granted by the Commission to the steel industry. We are expecting more of green steel manufacturing investments to take place within Europe. So although this is contrary to the idea or the the global excess capacity issue that EU has been against for so long, they will be contributing to this, I believe, excess capacity as well. But as I said, the impact to us will be positive in a, let's say, medium and long term. But in the long term, I have my doubts because also the European steel industry is putting pressure on the Commission to put limitation on the export of scrap, which is the main raw material. Although, based on WTO regulations, it should not be limited.
Thank you. Any questions to our panelists?
I have a couple of, sorry, I'm Alan Beattie, I work for the Financial Times. One question is, your company is already having to report emissions, right?
Yes, we do.
As of last year. Can you just tell us how that process is? Is it very bureaucratic? Is it going well? You know, what's your experience of it so far?
We just discussed, I mean, so far, yes, we do report, although we received a very, very complicated Excel sheet to report all the emissions that we generate, and then supposed to report it by end of January, but it was extended in the last minute, and hopefully it will be done by end of this month.
Yeah, the second question is, how has the CBAM affected the debate within Turkey about implementing a carbon price, implementing a border carbon tax itself? Because, I mean, in theory, because Turkey has a lot of experience integrating with the EU market, one advantage to Turkey might be if Turkey puts in a carbon price and a carbon border tax and effectively becomes part of the EU market, then you will effectively join the the rich country club.
No, I mean, we at least believe that we were part of the club as far as steel and coal is concerned. But today, it doesn't seem so. As I said, we have the advantage. No matter what CBAM will bring, we will still have an advantage towards our export into EU because of our low emission, because of small carbon footprint as far as steel goods are concerned.
And is it affecting the debate about putting in an official carbon price within Turkey and putting your own border?
Of course we will, at least, you know, to keep that, the tax within the country to use for our own purposes. That's supposed to come into effect by beginning of this year, but then the administration is just postponed for another year. Hopefully it will be in place by 2025.
This is not a question of full alignment with the ETS and full alignment with CBAM, right?
No, it is.
It is, okay, fine. And that will be fully in place and that will be, I mean, in theory, if you actually integrate with CBS, you don't have to pay CBAM at all.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I believe it will be in place by beginning of 2025.
That's right,
That's the last, you know, information.
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps just following up to this question, I mean, there's one thing to put in place an ETS, and of course, I mean, you have every interest in aligning it to the EU ETS. Perhaps another thing is linking them from a legally relevant point of view. I come from Switzerland, and I can tell you, we really did envisage the emission trading scheme to be aligned with the EU, but that didn't make the negotiating process of the linking agreement any less burdensome or long. So for the purposes of being totally exempted, it has a fully integrated into the EU ETS and CBAM exempted. I mean, this is a totally different story from a legal point of view. But anyways, I had a question concerning the financing needs for the greening of the sector in Turkey, which is evidently going to be very huge. And I had a curiosity because, to my understanding, Turkey has been very active in seeking financing opportunities through the flexibility mechanism and very active in the carbon market space. And I was just wondering whether you see any opportunities for, let's say, fully grasping the potential of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement activities for financing some of the needs of the industrial base in Turkey. Yeah, thank you.
We're in our last 5 minutes, Mike. I have to.
I mean, now, from our point of view, as a steel manufacturer in Turkey, yes, we have still issues on the financing side because of the current, let's say, political, economical situation of the country. But on the other hand, on individual companies, we've been very active in investing for especially renewable energy because, as I just said, on the manufacturing side, on the process, we have a huge advantage, but where the area that needs to be improved is the energy side. Although, if you look at the energy generated in Turkey is more or less similar what in Italy or Germany as far as the carbon emitted per kilowatt hour. But the government has just introduced a new, let's say, regulation where the steel companies are trying to enjoy to build, let's say, more of solar power that's going to help to reduce the Scope 2 emissions. But coming back to your question, we sure will have a tough time because of all these, what we have just previously explained, to achieve the goal, or let's say, complete the homework we have in front of us. If we keep being, let's say, restricted, facing these barriers in front of us with our relations, the trade relations, what I'm talking about with the EU, that's going to create issues, I believe.
One last question from here.
Maybe I'll ask it. I think a
Okay.
servant to ask.
I have the same instant questions. Have you heard about the nuclear batteries coming from China, which can reduce the carbon footprint and help the sustainability? Use it in melting systems.
Nuclear batteries,
I haven't heard that yet, honestly. What I know, the Chinese are also very focused on reducing their emissions today.
Tatiana?
Thank you. I actually have a few questions, but I will limit it just to one question in the interest of time. I was wondering about the opinion of the Turkish steel industry on the Global Sustainable Steel Arrangement, which is kind of another initiative that is being discussed between the EU and the US, whereby the idea is that you would have a certain kind of standard for carbon intensity for steel and aluminum sectors, and once the threshold has been surpassed, then the products imported would need to have to pay a carbon tax, essentially.
I mean, we would support that, honestly.
But I mean, in general, are you following that discussion?
No.
I think it's
But it's
not.
also matched with an excess capacity subsidy type of condition, huh? So that could actually very much involve Turkey as well.
Because this is all being generated for a certain purpose, what we believe today.
it shouldn't be between two countries or two regions, and it should be open to all world steel producers.
If you remember, back in 2002, we were together in Paris for the OECD meetings, and I still do remember what the chairman of US Steel was saying against the Chinese and saying, you're producing too much steel, and this is not sustainable. The total the consumption of the world was only 780 million tons. Today we consume more than 1.8. So this is how much steel we need in the world. But, we need to approach the subject in a different way.
So, thank you very much, everybody. I want to express my sincere gratitude to all of you for your participation throughout our conversation today, and I hope this insights from today's discussion pays us to a very meaningful action, and we try towards a brighter, more sustainable future, fair and free trade environment. Thank you very much.
Yeah.